that to me is more telling than anything else. Hollywood Reporter, part of the Access journalism complex, they're joining in on the pileup. To me, that's the story here.
Let's be honest. We started making fun of this whole movie a while back when we found out the casting, because everything that we talked about tonight, everything coming into this idea that Hollywood is beset on making, or especially in this case, Disney is beset on this DEI narrative. We have to hire people that are not white. I mean, we Pro and I have covered this ad nauseum. We've shown the evidence of it. We know from Chris Rufo last year and his breaking open of the Reimagine Tomorrow program. Pro and I had an individual contact us that used to work with Disney in the advertising department and share a bunch of stuff with us. DEI goes down into the advertising department. Recently picked up by, go ahead, Pro.
I was just going to tell you, Valiant, you don't know this yet, but we got more stuff today. I'll be sharing it with you tomorrow. Just a heads up.
I think I saw an email. I hadn't really got a chance to
just
look at it yet.
Just a heads up.
Yeah, I think I saw an email come in this afternoon. I didn't get a chance to look at it yet. So, any case, but the point being is that Disney is absolutely committed to this. And some of the things that were released, Disney's own folks' words were basically replacing, making sure that at least 50% of all characters would be effectively reassigned. So if they had all these white princesses in the past, they got to change all these white princesses. They have to get more representation. The problem, of course, is that when you put that out there, and it's not only just what leaked in the videos, I mean, it's in their frickin' annual reports to stockholders and all this other kind of stuff. They talk about DEI and ESG being a huge thing for them. People understand what you're doing. They understand why you're doing it. And like we were talking about earlier with that report, it's people's knee-jerk reaction now is, oh, this again. It's not that they went out and they hired the best person to play a role. It's that they went out and the first thing they thought of was, okay, we can't let this be a white character. We need to open the diversity doors up a little bit more. So, we cast somebody like Rachel Zegler in the role of Snow White. Why? Because Disney's own words, from their own DEI research, they think that, well, white people are most likely to accept the Latina actress, right? Because it looks mostly similar. It's all about this ridiculous, superficial, superfluous nonsense that nobody really cares about. But then you have these actors come out and can't stop running their mouths. And they can't stop telling you about how the old movie was such garbage. And how it was 1937, and they didn't know what they were doing back then. And we can't have this today. It's not going to be a story about Snow White. This movie's going to have nothing to do with Snow White, except for the title. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings on Amazon. It's the same thing.
I don't know. I remember, you guys are, I remember seeing Snow White for the first time and thinking, she's being the leader. She really can be. That's what this character is all about.
Yeah.
Most just of the land.
Yes.
I personally think she's a princess preparing to wear a pantsuit.
She could be. She could be. But the point with this is that we've covered this, and it's been amazing just how much tripping over themselves. We did a video a couple of weeks ago. A lot of people did that. I think I was one of the first ones to throw out that UK Daily Mail article on a video where they showed, oh God, this is an actual set picture. This is Snow White. This is the Seven Dwarfs.
The seven magical creatures.
The seven magical creatures, right. And
they're magical, all right.
And then immediately it got hit up by everybody else saying, oh, well, I think it was Huffington Post and a few other places. Well, we contacted Disney. Disney said this isn't real. UK Daily Mail, I waited. I didn't pull the video. I said, I don't trust this. And UK Daily Mail went back and got confirmation from Disney that while there were two stand-in actors, that was the Disney production. So there you have it. But this is where we're at right now with this. And I'll read a little bit from this. Disney's live-action remake of 1937 Snow White. This is newer stuff. Doesn't come out until next year, but a culture war already is surrounding the film. Titled Snow White is already at full boil. First, several conservative critics took issue with the casting of Latina star Rachel Zegler from West Side Story as a character described in the original's Brothers Grimm story.
And background, right? She played a Latina in West Side Story, taking over the role that had been immortalized by a non-Latina, Natalie Wood.
Hmm?
Can you imagine, however, what she would think if a Natalie Wood equivalent were cast as Maria in West Side Story in 2023?
Great point.
Oh.
Yeah, great point.
Proceed.
And that's yeah, that's a great point. And look, here's the other thing. And the production changing the formerly titular Seven Dwarfs into a diverse collection of magical creatures of varying sizes and genders.
That just sounds like going to Starbucks in Greenwich Village.
Is that could they have just called the movie Snow White in the diverse collection of magical creatures of varying sizes and genders?
I would watch the movie if they called it that. I would legitimately watch it if they called it that.
Oh, I've got that. You mentioned VHS before. We'll talk.
I mean, look, she talked about, quote, this is from Zegler, the title star of Snow White. She's not going to be dreaming about true love, she told Variety in September of last year. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. People are making these jokes about ours being the PC Snow White, where it's like, yeah, it is because it needed that. She told,
better. Better what it needed than
this 22-year-old snot-nosed brat. Yeah,
every 22-year-old thinks they know everything. That's the point.
Exactly.
But she does. She's a theater kid. Come on, script.
Well, no. Well, I mean, Valiant, as someone who's been involved in the industry and whatnot, I'd like to know your opinion. To me, it just seems like she's 22. She's a 22-year-old. Her brain still isn't finished forming. I think she is just regurgitating the talking points the studio is giving her, and she's not thinking about the ramifications when 5 years from now she becomes the new, Sean, what the hell? Sean, what's her face?
Sean Young?
Sean Young, that nobody wants to work with.
And Jeff, that's what you're saying is the result is that she's in danger of that.
Yeah.
I think part of it is maybe, I don't know if it's the studio so much feeding her this pablum as much as it is this is what she's grown up with. That's what that generation has grown up with, especially out there in Hollywood land, right? I mean, I've got, like I said, I just moved my oldest to college last weekend. She's going to be 18 in a couple of weeks. She's grown up all around that, and I've had numerous conversations with her over the years that, look, I mean, you got to think about this logically, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go through the whole father spiel, but you can imagine what a 17-year-old girl is around in school nowadays, even down here in Louisiana. This is California. This is Hollywood, for God's sake. I'm sure her brain has been pumped full of this trash for years. 7
magical creatures every day in the hallways.
Yeah, I think she actually believes this. That kind of attitude about, basically, I mean, I take this. Rachel Zegler's walking out there going, we're fixing this. I'm fixing Snow White. I'm 22 years old. This 1937 crap don't fly today. That was so sexist and blah, or whatever she thinks. And she's personally going to come in and fix it. I mean, that's the impression she gives me. I'm not saying that's what she thinks. I'm just saying that's the impression I get. That's my opinion.
Wait till she reads the original Brothers Grimm story. It's way creepier.
Really? Right? Yeah. I mean, yeah. So
the prince buys her body, and then the only reason she wakes up is because the dwarves trip and dislodge the apple from her throat. And then he's like, "Oh, you're alive. Okay, let's get married then." And she's like, "Okay." It's like, there's no agency.
The Brothers Grimm were very dark. Did people think? I mean, forget that. Like, no, the witch ate Hansel and Gretel. I mean, she ate the kids. I mean, so it's dark.
Grimm is no idle prefix.
No, it is not. Now, here's the updated part. Now, the Telegraph has an interview with David Hand, who has worked as a designer for Disney in the 1990s and whose father, also named David Hand, was one of the directors of the original film from 1937.
This is as close as you can get to Walt himself.
Yes.
giving a statement on this.
Who is spinning in his cryo chamber as we speak.
Oh, if he came out right now, he would ask for 250 cal.
Give the animatronics the
Jeep,
weapons.
and a Jeep, and he would go to town. Han doesn't directly criticize Zegler, but he unloads pretty heavily on the film, which is to say he's unloading on Zegler, which obviously he has not yet been seen by anyone outside the studio, even in trailer form. We don't need to. We saw 2 pictures. Those pictures worth 1,000 words and 1,000 miles of film to see what those formerly known as dwarves looked like. Quote, "It's a whole different concept, and I just totally disagree with it. And I know my dad and Walt would also very much disagree with it," Han said. He called it a disgrace. That Disney is trying to do something new with something that was such a great success earlier. Their thoughts are just so radical now. They change the stories. They change the thought process of the characters. They're making up new woke things, and I'm just not into any of that. I find it, quite frankly, a bit insulting what they may have done with some of these classic films. There's no respect for what Disney did and what my dad did. And I think Walt and he would be turning in their graves. This guy, it says in the next paragraphs, this is a 91-year-old guy saying these words. 91. Just to remind folks out there watching, and Script, I'm sure you can wax far more eloquently on this than can I.
I mean, Ron can identify.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, being as like someone who is ghostly white, like Snow White, I think I've got an authority here.
Yeah. Well, no, what I was going to say was to remind folks, think about this. It's 1937. Disney is on this kick right now of remaking classic Disney animated features in live action form, which is terrifying in and of itself. And let's be honest, especially most of the more recent ones have not gone to plan, or at least maybe they did go to plan, they just sucked anyway. This is Snow White. This is the film that introduced Walt Disney feature film animation to the world.
It was the first one in the history of the world.
Yeah, this is the picture that if you're Disney, you have to be, in my opinion, the most cautious with, the most reverent with.
The cartoon dwarfs are literally the pillars of the headquarters building.
At the C-Suite in Burbank. If y'all have never seen a picture of the C-Suite in Burbank, it's literally, I'll pull it up. We see it all the time because we cover the earnings calls here live on Valiant Renegade. We did one a couple of weeks ago. But y'all talk about this for a minute. I'm going to pull up this picture. Give me a second here. But go ahead. Thoughts on this, guys?
A quick quip on my part.
I'll say something that nobody really wants to hear here, which is that I don't need David Hand to tell me this. I don't even really think David Hand has any particular moral leverage on this point. I mean, frankly, it's a non-story that David Hand agreed with what everybody with common sense in America can observe. I mean, you know, it's Valiant. Where was that published? That story?
That was Hollywood Reporter, I believe.
So that to me is more telling than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood Reporter, part of the Access journalism complex, uses this David Hand interview, which they picked up the phone, or so anybody got a guy we can talk to quote on this? They're joining in on the pileup. To me, that's the story here, because of course David Hand's going to think that. Of course, anyone who ever worked for Disney who has any sense whatsoever of what that company historically stood for, at least ideally, would say that. It's not particularly, novel, but it's the fact that Hollywood Reporter added it to once again into the news cycle.
Yeah. Oh, sure. But this is the Disney C-Suite, folks. If you've ever joined us for a Disney earnings call in the last 2 years or however long we've been covering them, every 3 months, you see this for the first 30 minutes to 45 minutes of the stream, because this is the image that is in the placeholder. This is the Walt Disney Company C-Suite in Burbank. Snow White is so integral to this company that, yes, the Seven Dwarfs are the pillars holding up the building of Disney's corporate offices.
Or as Rachel Zegler calls it, the threshold of hell.
Yes.
Or as Griffin just mentioned in the chat, They'll change it to Pillars of Inclusion.
Oh, no.
Probably. Don't give me any ideas.
Is that dopey on top?
It is.
Yeah.
Well, that says it all, doesn't it?